I'm Zina Tenenbaum of Vaughan Public Libraries, and I'm here with Elliott Katz, published author. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, Elliott, just to get to know your background and your feelings about being a writer. So tell me, what influenced you to become a writer?
Well, it was reading books. One kind of books I was really fascinated by were books where the author did a lot of research and took a whole bunch of stories, ideas, facts, and information and put them together into a coherent, smooth-flowing story which persuaded the audience or provided inspiration or guidance to the reader. And I thought, I want to do that.
So it was mainly nonfiction that
Right.
you were influenced by. Was there any fiction that you enjoyed reading when you were younger?
I did, but they didn't really inspire me. It was just like taking, like I said, where an author would take all these different stories and all these different things from all these different places and sort of put it together in this coherent whole. I thought that was fascinating.
So it happened early on in your life that you thought you might want to be a writer, or
Yeah.
Okay. And you've written mainly in nonfiction books, but
Right.
different types of genres. You've
Right.
written books about hiking and cycling and relationships.
Right.
Of all your books, which ones are you most proud of?
Well, several of them. So I brought them here to show you. This is an earlier book. It's called Great Country Walks Around Toronto, and when I first moved to Toronto, I started exploring the ravines and river valleys, and you sort of happen on them, like you pass over on a bridge. And you think, well, what's down there? How do I get down there? Where does it lead? So I decided what's needed is a pocket-sized guide to these trails. And like I was saying before, I took research from all these different sources about people who walked these trails in earlier times, like Ernest Thompson Seton and H.M. Brule. It just brought together all these different stories and with instructions on how to find these trails, because that's the thing, a lot of people don't know where they are. They're kind of on a side street, and I put it all together in a guide that so people can enjoy these walks. Another book that I really have strong feelings for is Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man. And this is a book I wrote at the end of my own marriage, where I realized, at first you blame the other person, then you think, what do I have to learn from all this? How should I have been different? And here again, I took a look for timeless wisdom from all different kinds of sources, books written 100 years ago, something written 1,000 years ago. There's a lot of wisdom out there that men of this generation didn't learn. So I took it all together and I put it in the form of a story of a grandfather teaching it to his grandson. So it was very nice. And then, interestingly, so women who read this book asked me, so the main idea is in that book is a man should take leadership, shouldn't always wait for his wife to tell him what to do, should make decisions, not always say, whatever you want, you decide, and take responsibility. Don't blame your wife. Don't blame your wife, ever. So women would say to me, well, how do I get my man to take charge and show leadership? So I wrote a new book, How to Get Your Man to Wear the Pants, so you don't have to, which is responding to that, just strategies for women to use on how to get your man to realize that you really do want him to take charge and inspire him and motivate him to do it. So
my next question was going to be, how do you get ideas for your books? But I think you've answered that already. So I'm going to ask another question. What has the response been to these books?
Well, it's been very positive. So this book, when it came out, it was actually on the bestseller list in the Toronto Star, and it's very rewarding to hear from people, especially, a lot of people move to Toronto who have taken this book and gone out and explored these walks and enjoyed them. And they say, well, I wouldn't have known about them without your book. So that's very rewarding. And this book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, I've gotten so many comments, and you can look on Amazon and see some of these comments where people say, this book is what we needed to save our marriage. And comments like, this book has saved our marriage. Or from divorced men who say, if I had read this book while I was still married, I probably wouldn't be divorced today. And from divorced women who say the same thing, if my husband had understood this, our marriage would not have disintegrated. So it's very rewarding. One of the most rewarding things is to make peace between a husband and wife, There's too many divorces today. There's too many children from broken homes. So it's very rewarding to be able to improve a person's marriage and their relationship. And this book, again, it's just getting the feedback that, yeah, this is what I should have had when I was still married. Women have said that, if I had read this while I was married, why, things would have been different. So it's very rewarding to make a difference in people's lives.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it must be. So tell me, when you're working on a writing project, what is your daily schedule like? Do you have any secrets, like you wake up at 5 in the morning and write for 5 hours, or you must have your own type of
Well, that is true.
schedule.
I do wake up because I find my brain works best very early in the morning, so I do often wake up at 4 in the morning and start writing at 5. And so I'm retired now from my job, so I can do that because I don't have to be at work for 9 o'clock. But then comes, the mid-morning, I pack up my laptop and I go to someplace else. It's kind of isolating to work at home. So I'll go to a library or I'll go to Starbucks. There's a lot of people in Starbucks writing. It's fun, you get to meet other people writing other projects, and you need that interaction. So that's really my day.
Is it interaction? Are you talking to the other people, or is it the idea that you're all there doing the same thing?
Well, often I'm talking to other people. Often, I sort of listen in on other people's conversations, and you sort of hear words, especially like being the strong man a woman wants. I'd hear women complaining. Very often when women get together at a coffee shop, they sort of talk about their relationships and their husbands. So I listen to them, and, I get ideas. I'd be inspired by what they said.
I'm going to be careful when I'm having coffee with my girlfriends from now on. There might be a writer eavesdropping. So what would you say is the best part of being a writer?
Well, it's like I said, being able to make a difference in people's lives. It's very rewarding. And this book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, it's been translated to 24 languages around the world. I brought some samples. This is in Turkish, this is in Nigeria, this is Portuguese in Brazil, this is Hebrew in Israel, this is Polish, and this one's Italian. So, when I wrote that book, I sort of wrote it for myself and my friends, and then I thought, well, maybe it's just, men in Canada needed men in, North America. But then it's been translated in 24 languages around the world, so it really hit home to me that these are insights that men all over the world need, that it doesn't come naturally to a lot of men. So that's very rewarding to be able to make a difference. So
there was no cultural problem with men around the world understanding your
well, that's a very good question, because what I realize is, cultures are different, but human nature is really similar all over the world. I like other countries, here, Brazil, this was in Brazil, and that's where the whole image of machismo originated, and you think, well, they wouldn't need a book like this, but it sold very, very well in Brazil. The book was published in Japan, where I think every man has a geisha. It was published by a very big publisher there. So it really made me realize that human nature, whatever our culture, whatever our race, is very similar. We're underneath, we're all very similar.
Okay. So what about the downside of being a writer? I mean, you mentioned it's isolating to stay at home.
Right.
Is there anything else that you're not crazy about?
Well, it's the downside. Often when I think of a project and I think, well, I could do that book. It will take me, 5 months, 6 months. Well, then 2 years later, when I'm finally finished it, it's like, okay, I should learn my lesson. But the next time I tell myself the same thing, I could do that one, in a few months. So it's sort of like when you're in the midst of it, then you think it's never going to end, but you just keep going, and it does eventually end.
Right. What about writer's block? Do you ever suffer from that?
Not really. I think you just, whatever, if you feel blocked in one area, work on something else. Just work on a different chapter. Work on something that comes to you, and put something more difficult aside. My approach is, you start the day, start with the easiest stuff and work your way up to the hardest stuff.
Okay. So do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Well, write every day. Carry a notebook with you to write down your ideas, because very often people get ideas and they think, well, I'll remember that later, but often you don't. But if you get an idea, write it down, and then, at the end of the day, you might have a whole bunch of notes, and you say, oh, that's a lot of stuff I've written right there. Or maybe you could use your cell phone to dictate into it. That might be a better idea. And also, just don't give up. If you really believe in your project, excuse me, realize that every successful author was at one point an unpublished writer trying to publish their first work. Everybody is, and they had tell stories that my book was turned down by 100 publishers, and in the end, even the most famous story probably is Chicken Soup for the Soul. The first book was turned down by over 100 publishers. They've gone on to sell, 500 million books? So, keep trying if you really believe in your project. You can try. Nowadays, it's very easy to publish a book yourself on Amazon. Really, all you need to invest in is a good cover. And then you have to go out and promote it yourself, and it's work. It's work. But if you really believe in your project, just keep at it. Like they say, you're more likely to succeed if you keep at it. You're not likely to succeed if you give up.
Right. So you touched on another aspect of writing today. You said it's very easy to publish. There's probably huge differences between when you started writing and, I don't know when you started writing, but just compare the landscape to 50 years ago when you had the lone writer,
right.
pounding out the stories in an attic with a typewriter, whereas today, you can be writing while you can be multitasking. You can be
right.
You
can be sitting on the top of a mountain with a laptop.
So do you think this has improved writing in general, or maybe
I think
the opposite?
what it's changed, it's eliminated the gatekeepers. In the past, if you wanted to get a book published with a publisher, often you needed an agent, so you had to convince an agent, then you had to convince, that agent had to convince a publisher, and then that publisher had to go out and, sell the book and convince bookstores to carry it. So now, with things like Amazon, you could write your book, upload it to Amazon Kindle or to Amazon as an ebook and as a print on demand. It doesn't cost anything, but then you have to go out and promote it. But the thing is, I think the difference, it's sort of similar. It still rises and falls on the quality of the book. If you've written a good book, and you promote it, you could do pretty well. If it's not a good book, and the reviews say this is a waste of money, you don't buy it. The main thing is you got to work your hardest to produce the best possible book.
So basically, this is democratize the writing process,
right.
And also, I guess it's taken away a lot of jobs in the publishing industry as well. But
I don't know. It has. Publishers are still they're still publishing books. They're still selling books. They seem to be doing pretty well. I think. But for people who are just starting out, you could write a novel, upload it to Amazon Kindle, and sell it, let's say, for 99 cents or $1.99, and people might say, okay, well, I can get that novel for less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Right.
I'll try it. But in the past, if you say, you sell it to a publisher, and it's, first, it's very hard to sell a first novel to a publisher. Then it's very hard for a publisher to sell that first novel. And what are they going to sell for, $20? People are going to say, $20, I don't know if I want to buy it, but for $1.99 or 99 cents, I'll try it. And then you can build up a following of readers, and eventually may want to go to a big publisher if you can show them you've sold thousands and thousands of your book on Kindle. So it's, like you said, it's democratized. It's opened the gates, and like I said, it rises and falls on the quality of your work.
Okay, thank you, Elliott.
Okay.
That was a very thought-provoking conversation. I wish you success,
Thank you.
continued success in your writing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.